Welcome, everybody. Thank you for sharing this beautiful September afternoon with us. My name is Whitney. I'm the founder and CEO of Big Rocks Organizing. We're based in the Portland metro area, and I'm pleased to be able to introduce two of my colleagues as well. We have Andrea Thompson, who is an assistant professional organizer with us, and she has a wealth of experience. And also Jean, who is our executive assistant, is running all of our tech today. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Today, we're going to be talking about how to right size sentimental papers, this is actually the largest number of people we've had register. We had 63 people register for this event. So I know that there's a lot of us out here who are struggling with sentimental papers. So I'm hoping that we can help each other out today and have a great interactive discussion. Also want to make this a safe, non-judgmental space. So maybe we could start our sentences out with, have you considered, or have you thought about, rather than, if I were you, I would do this, or why have you done that, that kind of a thing. So just know that there's, no right or wrong answer, that each person's going to make their decisions about their items, but we're hoping you can take away some great tools and tips today and some support. So we're here. You're not alone. Thanks again for being here. So I wanted to dive in first and just kind of get a sense around the room here. Are there any burning questions or burning sentimental papers that you brought with you today that you'd like to have us address? That's okay. I know people don't want to be the first one. So Andrea, I might pick on you if that's okay.
I knew you would. Yeah, I have two questions. The first is a practical question. One of my piles of burning sentimental paper is kids' artwork. My kids are 26 and 30 now, but I have a stack probably that high tucked away of artwork that they've done from, age 3 on. And it's, a lot of the pieces are really big, and I don't quite know what to do with them. I can't really scan them. And I just, other than waiting for them to take them with them, which doesn't seem to be happening, I don't know what to do with all the artwork.
I'm curious, how do they feel about the artwork?
I think they probably have some favorites. I think I could probably call down or have them go through and pick out the ones they want. I don't want to burden their small spaces with stuff either. So,
I have the same problem. My daughter is 35 and she doesn't care about them now, but I'm thinking when she gets to my age, she would probably like to look back and say, oh, look what I drew at age 4 or something. Mm-hmm. So I'm not so saving it for myself, but like saving it for her future. I don't know. It is hard to get rid of those things because they're precious in so many ways.
They are. Well, maybe I'll just take your advice and leave them.
So do you like your idea of maybe right-sizing them a little bit to maybe curate them and pick out the best of the best?
Yeah.
I don't know if you're keeping them in kind of an acid-free box or what kind of fridge you're using to protect them from dust and things like that. And we're lucky enough to have David. I might call on you because we have David, who's one of our lovely clients, who has a history of being an archivist and has a lot of experience with historical papers and genealogy. So David might have some advice about storage methods as well.
Hey, I have a son who's an artist, and I've gone through his stuff many times over the years and picked out the best, not just once, but many times over the years. He produces so much. And so I feel good about what I've saved, and he doesn't really care about the ones that I didn't save. So.
Wonderful. Are you saving them for him for the future or for your
right. Or not saving them for me. I threatened to have some framed. Some are so precious that I just want to have them framed. He did a nice oil painting for me a couple of years ago that I framed and had hanging on the wall, but that's different.
Yeah. Are you keeping the other ones in any kind of special archival box or?
Not yet, no. I've got whole crumbling papers that need to go in boxes more urgently than his artwork.
Okay, I was just curious, just checking in. Something that we use for, especially for younger kids or people with younger kids who are actively producing art, or if like David, you have a child who's very artistic or that's their career, is we'll suggest getting a bin or limiting by physical space so that it forces you to go through and curate and right size from time to time and just keep the best of the best. So then there's these large underbed storage boxes, these large Rubbermaid totes, and those are pretty good, Andrea, too, because I know you said some of them are really big, kind of almost too big to scan. So
Yeah.
maybe consider like an underbed tote,
That's a good idea.
about 6 inches tall. Yes, Jill, I see your hand up.
Is Rubbermaid, are they archival? I mean, will things just rot in the Rubbermaid because of the off-gassing? Should you use a,
Probably an archival box would be better, but it might depend on what somebody's budget
and
is.
what the
what their
quality is, of
resources
course.
are, the quality of the artwork. How precious is this item?
It can go in the Rubbermaid, that can, yeah.
Yeah. And then Elizabeth, I saw your hand up as well.
Yeah, one of the things I did when my kids were little was they got to hang them on the wall and then we take a picture of it. And so I have a photograph of all of their artwork for them.
Oh, I love that idea. So you don't necessarily have the physical piece.
Yeah, they just kept what they really wanted and the rest is just pictures now.
Wonderful. Jean, I wonder, sorry, I'm talking to Jean, our executive assistant. If you could mute people who aren't actively speaking, that would be great. I hear a little background noise. Thank you. And two, if people feel more comfortable putting questions in the chat, feel free to do that. Oh, I'm curious, what other burning sentimental items do people have that they want to talk about today?
This is Gloria. Paper is another of my big challenges. I've actually gotten rid of some of them before we came on in the last few weeks. So I was excited to let you know that. But here's one of mine. Here's one of mine. Cards that people write lovely things to me and say how wonderful I am. And actually, I was in a really bad accident in 1975. And I was in the hospital for a while. And I kept all those cards. Well, probably within the last year, I decided that it was time to get rid of them. So I opened my box and I went through them. And guess what? I couldn't throw them away because people were so sweet to me. And that's like, I don't know what to do with that. Also, like testimonials, like, I mean, I can't throw away something when someone tells me how wonderful I am.
I have a few thoughts for you. One is there is a phenomenon called tactile sympathy, and this is a real thing. If we touch an item, we're 60% more likely to hold on to it than if we don't. So if you have a friend or a neutral person who can go through things with you, that might be one strategy to kind of help right size and let go a bit. Another idea I have for you is I keep what I call my smile file. And so if I receive a really lovely note or piece of feedback from somebody, I put it in my smile file. And if my file gets too big for the space, if it no longer fits in there, then I go through and I right size and I let some of them go that maybe aren't as meaningful to me anymore. So that's an idea too, is to create a smile file. And then with cards, you could possibly, unless there's some kind of 3D card, consider scanning them as well. I know sometimes there might be texture or things that aren't quite captured through scanning. You could also consider making a collage like Elizabeth talked about doing. Those are just some ideas. I'm curious what other ideas that people have for Gloria. And if I'm not seeing your hand, please forgive me and please jump in. Jill, did you have something for Gloria?
You know, if it's not, depends on how many there are. I mean, is it hundreds? Is it 20? Or, you know, how many of these are there? Because I know cards take up space, but if they were in a box and the box was labeled, maybe that's all you need. Maybe, I don't know. But that's just a thought that came to my head. If it's hundreds, then you may have to decide, I guess, but
That's a good question. What
That's
kind
the
of
quantity.
They are in boxes, but the boxes is plural.
Oh, wow. You had so many people who cared about you after you had your accident. That's
Well,
a
I mean, that was
wonderful
one,
to
that's one
have.
box, but then there's all the birthday cards and the anniversary cards and like, oh, my mother's handwriting, you know, she's gone. Like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
I think I think scanning is probably one of the better ideas, but yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, scanning, maybe even creating an album for those cards or for each specific event. One other thing to think about too is that when somebody sends us a card and they receive the card and they read it, the card's job is done. It served its purpose. So when we send our clients thank you notes, we'll often put, please recycle me after you read this. My purpose is done. So that concept helps me when I'm right sizing my cards. And these days, I think we get so few in the mail that it's special when they do arrive, when we get an actual card in the mail. Any other thoughts or ideas? Yes, Lori.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So the thing that occasionally, and I mean occasionally, works for me is to say, I'm only going to keep X out of 10 or X out of 20. So I give myself a number before I even start.
Nice.
That's all I had.
No, that's a great tip. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Joanne, you have your hand up too? Joanne?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Oops, now you're muted again.
I was just thinking when Gloria mentioned about her mother's handwriting, that maybe that card could be put in the photo album with other pictures of her, because it shows it's a story about her mother. Just an idea.
Thank you for that idea. I think sharing stories is really important, especially as we're going through our sentimental papers. So whether we're putting together a story, and I know, Gloria, that's what you do. You tell people stories, so you're really good at that. Might be harder with our own stories, but you have a leg up on most of us because that's what you do for a living. But I love that idea. Thanks, Joanne, for sharing.
I have an idea, or I don't know if it's a good idea for you, Gloria, but there was a birthday party for me, and my dear friend went around and collected what I love about Phyllis, statements from my entire family and from all my friends. Then she created placemats, and all their comments were on the back of the picture of Japanese flower arrangements. They're big, they're placemat thing. And there's a beautiful calendar picture from a Japanese flower arranging thing. And then you flip it over. And there's, I think probably, they were looking for 60 different things to say because that was my 60th birthday, but I think we ended up with 124. And the reason that I bring that up is because it's lasted 13 years now, and I love to read it, but it's also very practical. I mean, they are laminated. So on the front is a beautiful picture, and on the back is beautiful things. I don't know, might work.
What a cool idea, Phyllis. Thank you so much for sharing that.
It's a
love that.
wonderful thing. It's precious.
And it's practical too. My goodness. Does anybody else have a burning sentimental paper question? Jill?
My sister, we divided up the family items, and my sister has all the love letters from my parents to each other, and their drawings that my father made also on those. And she's slowly making copies and sending them to us, which I just keep putting with the photographs, but still, it's paper that it's not going to last long because it is paper. But I'm sure other people have those also, those, not many people probably have love letters that their parents wrote, but yeah, because they're not to us, they're to each other, you know.
It's funny you should mention that, Jill. I have a big stack that my parents wrote to each other in college, and I cannot bring myself to read them. They're wrapped in plastic. I've never opened it. It just feels like an invasion of privacy. I cannot bring myself to find out what they were like in their, early 20s and what they were up to.
Do you
just
think
gonna
your
pass them on to
daughters
them.
might want to read them one day?
That's what I'm thinking. I'll just pass them on to my daughters because they didn't know my parents, and
Maybe
it's-
take them out of the plastic though.
yeah.
Okay.
And I do have letters from my pen pal who we were writing forever in high school, and he did fall in love with me. So I kind of just put them aside, and there's not very much of them, but still I keep thinking, do I want those to be read by other people? Maybe I should dispose of them.
I don't know if you were with us last month when we talked about Swedish death cleaning.
Yeah.
One of the concepts that came out of that book was the burn box. So we can have a box for ourselves that are things that we can read and enjoy while we're still on this planet. And then when we depart, we have strict instructions for our loved ones to burn this box and don't open it, don't read anything in it, just burn it. So that maybe that's like a burn box type item. I don't know. Just an idea. Yeah, Nora, did you have a thought for Jill?
Well, just maybe I want to just add into her question a little bit. And so I have 100 letters that my father-in-law wrote to his wife. So they're, in a way they could be love letters, but really they documented his time in the military when he started serving in 1941 through 1946. And so every time he had overseas assignments, there were all these letters, and someone kept them. And somehow we got them, and I started reading them, and yes, there are some personal things like someone said, but there's a lot of history there, and I find it really fascinating. And so I thought, well, I would just transcribe them all, and then I could share them with family members. But I, did about 10, and I went, oh, I'm not sure I want to do this either. So I just want to add into that question that she posed of, what are the options for dealing with things like that? Because I think they're worth sharing with other family members, but they're hard to read the writing. It takes a while to get through them. And I'd like to find a way to share them with other people. To me, that's what would make them most valuable.
So scanning them might not be the best option because you said they're hard to read.
Right.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe a transcription service might be an option. Does anyone else have ideas for Nora and for Jill? Let's see, Connie, hand up.
If they're hard to read because they're faded, she might scan them and be able to get them easier to read. Or they could just be hard to read because of the handwriting. I don't know which way, but if you scan them, you can bring the writing out so that it's easier to read.
That's a great tip. I appreciate that. Mostly it's just because of the, it's cursive handwriting. I can read cursive, but it's just someone else's handwriting. It takes a little bit of effort to read it.
Yeah, and if you have family members who are under 40, they might not be able to read cursive. Yeah.
I just have to say that when I'm recording stories with people, because I record other people's stories, I don't tell their stories, I record them telling their stories, just to clarify, but because then we have their voice too, but that's a whole nother story. But I do encourage people with things like what you're talking about. It really is history. It's personal history. And we can read a history book, but it's not the same as reading the letters from grandpa and great grandma. And so I don't know what to tell you, but please don't let them just disappear.
That's a thought too, though, Gloria. What if Nora read the letters and recorded that, or had someone else read them? So you have an audio recording of the letters. That's another format to could possibly consider.
There's another idea, and that would be to have a person who's not part of the family read them, or read one, I mean, and get a sense from that person whether, if it was their family, that they would want that information. Sometimes, you know, a non-related person can give you insight.
Yeah, an unbiased opinion. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's a good point. And just having a neutral third party too, helping us go through our sentimental papers, someone who's non-judgmental, but who's a little bit more removed and not as closely connected, can definitely be a huge help. Connie, I see your hand is up.
Yes. My family found postcards from my grandfather to my grandmother during the war. And some of them were intimate, some of them were, you know, send chocolate chip cookies again. But they had some historical value in them because it talked about what he was doing as part of his military experience. And there's organizations that are hungry for these kind of documents. And so someone else in our family sent the postcards around so we could all see them, feel them, touch them, but then decided to send them to this repository who would really honor them. And even though there was some intimacy in it, we figured to the bigger to the bigger world, their value is important to have in that arena. And once removed from us, it was still wonderful to share those information. So for a final resting or final option, that might be someplace. And I'm sure there's, you know, ethnic organizations that would love to have letters from old family members that come from different countries or related to music or art or whatever. But and my mother did the same thing. She found museums that were interested in some of the paintings that were done by us as children in the local museum. So that was very comforting to know that they would be preserved forever.
Thank you for sharing that, Connie. I'll be curious if you happen to remember the name of the repository where the postcards ended up, or if anybody else attending today knows of different groups or places that would like to have historical letters and documents. And then we have a suggestion or an idea in the chat. I wonder if you could scan and enlarge the prints and print as a book. Would enlarging the print make them more readable? That's an idea too, Nora, to make them into a book.
This reminds me of the purging of history books that is going on in our schools right now. And it makes me so angry to think about because there's history in our own records, our own personal records, and we know how important that is. But that's a political issue. So
It is important to preserve history, politics or not, but it's hard to decide.
I guess
Is
life
worth
is
preserving?
politics.
Yeah.
I also have an example. My very first boyfriend in high school, now I'm 80 years old, he still sends me birthday cards, and we have never been married. We've never dated. He's had 3 wives. He wrote me. I still have his letter when I broke up with him about what a horrible, how much I had hurt him. And it's like 5 pages long and I can't throw it away. It's just such an odd expression of pain and oh, poor me. And it's very unusual. So I still have it. I don't know. But I'm, it's going to go for sure. But it's interesting to read things like that sometimes.
It is. He might not want that published for all of perpetuity. That might be a burn box item, but it's interesting how many emotions can come up as we're sorting through our sentimental papers. Joanne, I see that your hand is raised. I'm not sure if that's from before or if you had a different question or comment.
New comment. The things that pertain to certain localities, those places might want some of the history. My mother many years ago took a picture of me by a motel at the beach that no longer exists and gave it to the Historical Society. And I was very shocked when I went to that Historical Society to see my picture up on the screen. I was like 3 years old in an old saggy bathing suit standing in front of the sign to the motel. So, that they wanted it. They wanted these old signs. So the very precise locations where some of these things happened, the historical societies there may really be glad to get your data.
Thank you. That's a great idea. I just learned that there's a Facebook page for dead Portland memories. If people share pictures of items or places that no longer exist in Portland. So I'm sure there's a lot of different forums or outlets that we might not even be aware of. Does anybody else have a sentimental paper that they'd like to share with the group and get some ideas about? Let's see, we have a comment in the chat from Kay. We interviewed my father about his military service in World War II for the Oral History Project for Veterans connected to the Library of Congress. Perhaps they accept written papers too. That is a great idea, Kay. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's neat that you interviewed your father and captured that memory.
This is Connie. I believe that's the project that we sent the postcards to.
Okay. So Jean from our team, if you could put that on our list, we'll follow up and see if they accept papers. And then in our follow-up email to everybody, we'll let you know. Hey, Lori, I see your hand up, and then Jill.
I have a question on paper that should have a time limit, but I can't quite figure out what time limit it has. When my dad was ill, I kept everything and I put on the outside of the box, go through in 1, 2, 5, 10 years, and I can't decide how to decide.
Are these mostly medical records?
A lot of it had to do with negotiations between care, and some of it's a little bit emotional. Some of it is just recognizing the efforts that I took. So some of it's patting myself on the back. Some of it's just a reminder about how hard it was. So, I have a lot of mixed feelings. I opened up the box and, it's been now over 5 years, but not quite 10. And I think, and then I just put the box down. So any advice?
That's hard when a box is emotionally loaded like that. Even if practically speaking, we might say, oh, I don't need to hold on to these for taxes or for whatever records.
Well, and then there's another box, and it's all of my parents' tax records from 1950. And my dad died
just from 1950.
Taxes from 1950 until he died in 2017. And it's astonishing all the detail that's in that. I have 2 sisters, and they've been very candid. They couldn't care less. But I mean, would there be somebody that would be interested in a store owner tax, I don't know.
So if they're business taxes, my understanding is that they should be kept for 10 years, business records.
Hmm.
Personal ones, you could double check with your CPA, but usually 7 years is how long we keep them.
I just find it fascinating to see. I mean, for me, it was fascinating to look at tax records from that far back. They're so different from now. Is that something that would be interesting to a historical society, or I don't
Possibly.
know.
Yeah, if you have the bandwidth to do a little research.
I think it's always, I mean, it's one way to get stuff out of your house. And like I just put in the chat, if they tell them that if they don't want this stuff, that you don't want it back. But then that way you're not making the final decision. And I mean, that's history. I mean, you're right. It is. It's history. And I think we're losing so much history, I think, right now with all the digital stuff that, anyway, that's my bias,
That's actually a good idea, historicals, just to bring it down and see what they think and just go from there. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Gloria. They could be that neutral third party to kind of give you some perspective, Lori, possibly. And Jill, I see your hand is up.
I was going to say, whatever you do, save the immigration papers, no matter how far back they go. A friend of mine is trying to get a dual citizenship, and she's able to because she has all that information, even though it's her great grandparents. So also it's kind of interesting, where did they really come from? And but that's a history that I don't think you want to lose, but it's also a very important paper that I don't think you should get rid of. That's my opinion. That's my opinion.
Sounds like pretty
I
sound
agree.
advice. So thank you. I'm curious, what other papers did you all bring with you today that you're struggling with, wondering what to do with them? Is there any other voices? We have some wonderful participation. Oh, we have a question. So Jean Harkin, do you want to go ahead and share your question? And
She wants to know how to put the hand up.
I don't really have a question yet. I'm just learning a lot and listening and getting some ideas. But I don't know how to raise my hand on the screen. That was my question.
Sorry, so if there's a button with a little smiley face, then it says reactions. So if you click on that button, it'll let you put up different reactions.
Oh, I see that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Just in case, so far I'm just learning a lot and really enjoying it. I don't have any pressing issues because my issues are not so different from everyone else's. So this is great. Thank you, Whitney.
Sure. Thanks for coming.
Appreciate it.
Lori, do you have another item for us? And then Connie.
Yearbooks.
Yearbooks. Okay, how
Oh,
many of us have yearbooks? Guilty. Yeah, I might go back to junior high. So do I
Why are they so
remember who
hard?
people are? I don't know. Anybody want to share some ideas? Has anybody tackled this frontier yet? You feel successfully?
They're stacked in my garage until I make a decision, and you're going to help me make that decision, I'm sure.
I will, and we won't have you physically touch them when we're making that decision.
I don't even know why I want to save them, but it's history, I guess, or what I used to be like. We are all kind of that way, aren't we? What did I used to be like when I was young? And what did I do? What did I look like? Who were my friends? I don't know. It's just another personal history.
It's identity. I think identity is one of the biggest struggles for me in letting go of sentimental papers. Like, it's who I was. who I imagine who I am now, and then who do you want to be? Like, I have 2 boxes of letters and journals from when I was in the Peace Corps, and I want to write a book one day, right? So it's that imagining of who you want to be as well, right? So identity, I think,
Well, I'm
definitely.
past that, but I'm way past who I want to be. But yeah,
It is
you
like
have
it's
so
kind of identity, and that's not
you
easy.
have
I was about to get rid of my high school yearbooks, and then I ran into people at the Cedar Mill Business Association, and it turned out we all graduated from Sunset High School the same year. So I dug them out and brought them to the next meeting. It was fun to see, who were we back then?
better than a reunion.
Any ideas about yearbooks?
I will tell you that I went to a big high school and I called them and asked them if they wanted it. And they ever so gently told me that they had plenty of copies.
So no.
Darn.
Thank you.
Angie, did you have a thought about yearbooks? Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
There we go. Sorry, I'm on my phone, so it's harder to unmute. So I've moved a lot. So I have a unique experience because I just kept carrying them with me. And I thought, why am I keeping these? So I talked with my friends and we each decided which yearbooks we would keep. So I just kept one for my senior year. And then some of the other ones kept other ones. And when we get together, we can exchange them or look at them. But I did not keep all of them. And that's been helpful because I know my friends have them and I'm like, I can look at them if I need to. And then I took pictures of the pages that people wrote on. So I have those photos of messages people wrote, and that's all I kept, which was kind of helpful. Yeah.
Probably scan those pages too if somebody signed them, or maybe there's a picture of that you're in or something.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think for me, I was just tired of moving them in their boxes. So it was just a matter of necessity to have to decide.
David?
You're lucky you still have those friends around. That's
Yeah.
There are also databases with high school annuals on them that you can access to look at. So you don't have to keep the paper copy yourself.
Oh, that's great to know. So, Jean from our team, if you could make a note of that, we'll look into some of those databases and be able to
They're
share.
usually found on genealogy sites or things like that.
Fantastic. I'm gonna look at a note here.
Ready for my question?
Oh, classmates.com has online yearbooks from Andrea from our team. Thank you so much for that, Andrea. That's great. Do we have any more thoughts about yearbooks?
I didn't like high school. I threw mine out. I think I kept my senior year and then my college senior year. That was it.
Nice. Yeah, if things don't have great memories, then why should they take up space? So we do have a question in the chat, but I think Connie, you had your hand up first. So I wanted to go over to you first if you still have a question.
Yeah, thank you. Something that David touched on that's in my mind, and maybe this is broader than what you want to talk about, but I have a lot of documents in my computer, and I know there's things like the cloud, but they're starting to come out with these like Click-Free Pro video savers, document savers, where you put them on a stick and then they can be carried and more easily accessible. I recently had a friend die and no one in his family had any of his passwords. So we don't have access to his resume, any of his, pictures, his address book. So I was wondering if you had any ideas for a document, for that resting place off your computer, but not in a drawer. And anything you found, any new gadgets or anybody's found a better way to store those kind of things, but still have easy access to them.
Honey, were you addressing your question to David, or what David said spark your question?
No, I had the question before David mentioned it, but then he talked about documents and storage. So I was just building on that comment. So it's to the group.
Okay, thank you. So one idea I have for you, there's something called forever.com, and there are other photo and online document storage platforms as well. But you can share photos or documents with people that you just need to have an email address for them. And you can curate them into different albums and give different people permission to see different things and access different things. And it lives for 100 years beyond the date that you die. And you can bequeath your account to somebody. You just need an email address to do that. So that's one platform, one idea for you where you could share things with multiple people. Does anybody else have ideas? Got a thumbs up from Joanne.
For the person who, oh, sorry. No, wait, for the person who is having trouble decoding information that's from their or their friend who died, I would go to a computer expert. They sometimes have tools that aren't available to the rest of us. To get past password issues.
That's a good idea, Lori. Thank you. And in November, our guest speaker is going to be an estate planning attorney. So we'll be talking about how to get organized for the ultimate life transition. So I think one of the things we'll touch on is passwords and, things. How do we make sure that people have access to the things they need to have access to? How do we make it easy for our loved ones?
Whitney, you mentioned place where you could store your data. I didn't catch where it was.
Oh, sorry. It's forever.com, and it's in the chat, but we'll send it in the follow-up email as well. And there are other platforms too. This one you pay for your storage once, and then you own it for 100 years past the day that you die. So some require a monthly subscription, and this one is you just pay one time, and then they'll convert it as technology changes and evolves. There's no fee for them to convert it to whatever the latest technology is. So that's nice. So we had a question in the chat. I'm going to go back to there. We have a comment from Nora, who loves forever.com. Thanks, Nora. And then we had a question from Sharon. I have a box of documents for relatives to look at, including 1969 taxes. After they look at everything, anything they do not want, I will get rid of. It just seemed that 69 taxes would be interesting to look at. Yes, great idea. I think it's great to give people a deadline, and then if they don't want it, we'll let it go. Well, that's another nice tip or tool. Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, Jill?
I have masses of things to shred. I mean, and I've looked into how much it's going to cost me, because I have the taxes of my in-laws, and then I have my husband's medical records, and it's just, I can't just dump it because there's too much personal information, and it'll cost hundreds of dollars to get them all shredded.
How much volume are we talking about?
Well, they say every now and then you'll see something, 5 document boxes are free. Well, I probably have 20 document boxes, which is insane. And I put them in a huge, gigantic Rubbermaid and pray that some meteor will fall on it and they'll catch on fire. It'll be all gone, but it's not happening.
You can buy a shredder for not too much money and just do it.
You know how many shredders? I would burn out a shredder. I've already burned out one shredder, and I went, and I've been taking. So I bought a huge magic marker and I started lining. I went, this is taking forever. It's
so Jill, a couple of resources for you. One is that it's 99 cents a pound to take it to the UPS store or Staples or Office Depot. 99 cents a pound.
Okay.
Also, we've used a company called Data Safe, and they will come and pick it up, or you can take it to them, and their rates are really reasonable. We use that when we are clearing out houses after people passed away, and there's a lot of documents and papers that we need to shred to protect people's identities.
Right.
So they're a great local company that we have worked with.
Because there's checks. I can't believe that my father-in-law kept every single check he ever wrote.
Oh, goodness.
So they go way, way back.
They do. I'm sorry. You're
They're not even historic.
papers.
Data safe is what they're called.
It's called Data Safe. Yeah. And we can put that in our follow-up email as
Because I
well.
can't be the only person who has this problem.
Oh, no.
So-
no.
So one of the things that I did is I went through some of the papers and I just hand ripped off the personal name, but the data, I could throw that away because their name wasn't in it or their social security number wasn't in it. I mean, I'm not sure I could do it with 40 boxes, but I did it a little bit at a time while I was watching TV. And so I got rid of a lot of stuff, separated the identifier from the data.
That's a good idea.
But
Very
if you look and you flip it over, there's more information. It's like, how many times can they put my name on a piece of paper?
Oh, I know. It's okay. Do
Insane.
they
It's
really
insane.
need that? Right. No, but it
Depends
was
on
a-
your energy and your bandwidth and your
Yeah.
time too. But that's one idea, definitely.
and also what particular kind of data you're working with. You know what I mean? Where the identifiers are. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if
And
it's
then
your blood type and your name's missing, that's fine. But if it's your name's appearing in different places, it's so maddening.
it is. And unfortunately, identity theft is a real thing too, even after we've passed on.
Yes, I know, because I've already been the hacked person too many times already.
So even
the
people
state of
who
Oregon,
passed
too.
away, there's a hot market for stealing their identities. So
Right.
I think
before the pandemic, they used to have a thing in Beaverton where you could bring 3 boxes and
Oh,
all you'd have to do is buy lunch for 4 friends and you'd have 20, you'd have a bunch of boxes gone, but I don't know if they're doing that again.
there are some local free community shredding events, like the Raleigh
Yeah.
Hills Business Association does one every April. The Beaverton Police Department used to do one on a
Right.
quarterly basis, and they'll
Yeah.
let you bring 3 boxes.
Yeah.
We do, when we find out
That's
about
fine.
those, we do send those out in our newsletter and share them on our social media to let people know. And they typically just ask you to donate some canned food. So that's another way to, I guess, get rid of those boxes over time. Yes,
West
Senia,
Lynn is
your hand is
having
up.
one. West Lynn is having one this month.
Oh, great.
I look
Okay.
that up. I'm gonna ask if I can bring my stuff, even though I don't live there.
Maybe I
Hillsborough
don't
is
know.
having
It's
one
the
too.
first, like the first 100 people who show up, you have to get there early usually for those things.
Yeah, and someone said Hillsborough is having one too.
Oh,
It's like, take $20 and donate to the police department. You just go from city to city. That could be
Yeah.
kind of.
That could work. Yes, Senia, did you have a question or an idea for the group? Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Yes, during COVID, I decided to clean up. So I had about 10 years of shredding. And this is just my thought, but I just wadded everything up. It was very time consuming and ended up having a little small bonfire. But it was so therapeutic just to get rid of it. One of my weaknesses is just decision making. And it's just I like to keep stuff, but I don't have an intention or a purpose for it. So then just stuff piles up, but getting rid of it was just, I don't know, it feels refreshing.
Oh, thanks.
But
That's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, but I didn't know about the community cleanups. So that's good to know. I'm gonna make a note of that for the future.
Yeah, if we have a safe place to burn documents, that's
Yes.
a free way to get rid of them too. So that's legit.
Oh,
Thank
After
A
it
weenie
stops raining.
roast.
After it
Weenie
stops raining. Until it stops raining, don't do it.
Well,
Yeah.
yes,
Until it starts
Yes.
raining, sorry. Yeah.
no, definitely. So selfish question for you all. What about journals? What ideas do people have for those of you who keep journals? Uh-oh.
Just a
Okay.
quick story. Don't have your journal fall out of your purse. And then you have to go back to the store to get it.
Oh, no.
Long time ago. My friend went in and she said, well, there were coffee rings all over it and everyone had read my journal. So watch where you put that journal. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you for the warning. Nora?
Yeah, I have, my share of those too, and sometimes I've gotten rid of them. Sometimes if I just read through them again, I'm like, okay, I'm done with this now. And I'm much easier to toss them. Recently, when I found a box and had some journals in them, when I started looking at them, what I noticed was there was information in there that I wanted that related to all the picture organizing I had been doing. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to look through these I'm going to mine the data that I need and want, and then I'm going to throw them away. So I think you have at different times in your life, maybe there's different purposes for what you could use something for. And so that's what I found right now is that I'm just going to mine the data, and then I'll put that information on my pictures in the descriptions, and then I'm good with getting rid of it, because I really don't need the angst part that most of us tend to put in journals, or I did anyway.
Yeah, we don't need to relive that.
So,
Oh, thank you for that practical tip. And Yesenia, I didn't know if you had a comment about journals or if your hand was up from before.
Oh, yes, my hand was up from before, but that's one of my weaknesses too. I have journals from years and I'm not sure what to do. My only thought was just go through them and pass information on to the current year if it's even pertinent. But yeah, I'll take my hand down. Thank you.
That's okay. And we had a question from Leslie in the chat to Jill about where the Westland shredding event is being held, and do you know the date? If you do, we can put it in our follow-up email. Well, any last burning question? We have time for maybe one more. I really appreciate the discussion today. Thank you, everybody, for bringing great questions and great conundrums and ideas to share and resources. No last burning questions for the group? Well, please come back and join us next month. Next month, we're going to be talking about photo organizing basics. So if you have photos and you're kind of overwhelmed and you don't know where to start with how to get those organized, we're going to be covering that. And then in November, we'll be talking about essentially estate planning and how to prepare for the ultimate life transition. So thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. It's beautiful out there, at least where I am. I hope you have a great night. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you, everybody.